best language to start with for beginners. So this is probably, it's both overrated and underrated, because technically you can start with any language, as I'm going to show you, but as far as languages you should start with as a beginner, and, well, the criteria for what you should, I'll get into it, it's complicated. It's the top of the next slide. So, the best language to start with is one that should have a few things, and first of all, I'll say it now, you can really start with any language. It doesn't matter. You can start with anything. Some are going to be easier, some are going to be harder, some are going to be more fun. It's very subjective, but I'm just going to say that first out of the way. Presumably, though, you want to start with a language that isn't too challenging, that's going to put you off. So I'm just going to go through a few things. The best language to start with is one that has a few things. So, is it easy enough that you can do it? Obviously, you can do any language, but is it easy enough that you're going to reasonably be able to do it? You don't have to commit 4 years to it. You can learn it without having to put in like 6 hours a day, or unless you want to do that, but ideally you can learn it by putting in an hour a day for a year and a half or so, and you'll be able to do it. Are you going to enjoy learning / using it? That's very subjective. You should definitely pick a language that you like. You like the sound of it, you like the country, and do a bit of research before you commit to it, because it is a big commitment. And I know for myself, if I do give up on something, which is rare, it feels really bad, especially if it's a big commitment. So make sure, part of that is making sure you want to commit to it, then commit to it, and then see it through. A lot of people like committing to stuff and not finishing it. Some people commit to things too easy and then feel bad because they don't actually like them that much, that kind of thing. You also need to consider the resources available. That's basically a non-issue for most languages you'd want to learn, because they're popular enough that there's tons of stuff on the internet. You don't even need a teacher or to meet someone in person, because you can find them on the internet. And yeah, the only time that can really be an issue is if the language is incredibly difficult and you don't want to spend any money, which it's most languages you can learn without spending any money, but it might be easier if you have someone in person to talk to. And also languages that are minority, so really small communities speak them. They're obviously not going to have easily accessible stuff on the internet, so that's going to be hard for you. If for whatever reason you wanted to learn that language, presumably if you did want to learn a minority language, you would want to learn it because you knew someone who spoke it, and then they can teach you, so that again is a non-issue. It's also very personal, very subjective, so that is obviously going to come into it. If you're learning for work or personal reasons, like for a friend or a partner or whatever, well, you have an advantage going in, because that's obviously going to incentivize you to learn it, and potentially the reason why you're learning contains someone who knows that language, if that makes sense, so they can help you. And yeah, that's obviously going to greatly influence which language it should be. However, there are a few languages overall, and this is probably what you wanted to hear, that are the best to start with. If you're one of those people, you don't have really a particular reason you want to learn a language, or you want this to be the start of you learning a bunch of different languages, which is really cool, and you should do that. It's really, really healthy for you, and it's really good for your brain. And yeah, knowing, by the way, this is a bit of a side tangent, but yeah, knowing multiple languages is just awesome. Like, I don't even need to know the language sometimes. I can look at stuff, and if it's in English letters, I can basically understand what it means. Probably like 60+% of the time, which might not sound that good, but that's pretty cool. Like, just being able to read anything, even if you don't know the language, you can just be like, oh yeah, it's similar to this word, which I know. It's literally just awesome. So yeah, you should learn languages. It is really cool. But yeah, overall, the best languages to start with are, went a bit too far. The best languages. So obviously, as I said before, if you need to learn a language, that takes priority. But if you're one of those people like I was, you just want to learn a language, it's just cool, and you want to know which one should I start with, it's complicated. If you want me to just, kick you up the backside and just tell you one to start with, go with Italian. That was the first one I did. Super easy, super fun and rewarding. And it's not technically the easiest, but that's not necessarily a bad thing, because once you've done Italian, that means it's even easier to go back and do Spanish, because that's easier than Italian. So I think it's kind of cool to start at the second easiest, because then you can go back and do the easiest, and it's just piece of piss. But yeah, Italian's really, really enjoyable. It also has a lot of language learning concepts, but that doesn't necessarily make it hard, because it has a lot of different things in it, but they're quite easy to do. So, for example, there are components that some languages have and don't have. For example, in English, we don't gender our words, whereas like French, you have la, le. In Italian, you have il, la. In Spanish, you have el, la. They just gender words. We don't do that in English, but they do that in Italian. And there are plenty of other concepts: verb conjugation, grammar, tense, case, all these other things. that some languages have more or less of. And Italian is a good place to start because it has a lot of them, but they're quite easy to do. So it's a good introduction to all these things without overwhelming you. So that way, when you see it in other languages, like for example, Russian cases are much harder than Italian. It's probably not a good example. Tenses, for example, Italian has quite a lot of tenses, but there are languages with way more. I think there's some languages like 40 or something silly like that. So Italian's a good entryway into that. That might be a bit confusing. Too long, didn't listen. Italian is a good place to start. It's very rewarding. It's quite easy. If you need someone to tell you what to do, as I said, start with Italian, and I'm going to put some kind of resource link in the description. I'm yet to figure out what that is, but I'm going to put it in just to help you with Italian. Other good languages, so obviously it's not the only one. I'm just going to give you the languages that are generally pretty fair to start with. So something to remember is you want to lightly fan the flame, not extinguish it. So obviously you can start with Mandarin if you want, you can start with Russian, you can start with Arabic, but that to a lot of people would extinguish the flame. It's too hard, and it would get boring and frustrating at the same time, which is a really weird combination, but it happens. So you want to lightly fan the flame. That's just my advice. So the best beginner languages are generally Romance languages, so Spanish, French, Portuguese, Romanian, obviously Italian as well, but I've already said that. Romanian's in red because it's a bit harder than the rest because it has some Slavic influence. Slavic is languages like Russian, so instantly when you hear that, you're like, no, I'm not doing that. And yeah, Romanian might not be the best first language, but as I said before, you can start with any of them. I can't stop you, go for it. But yeah, Romance languages are fairly easy. They have descended from Vulgar Latin, which is the language the Romans spoke. So they all have a lot in common. Spanish, French, all those. They all have words in common, things in common. Even if they sound different, they're spoken in different places. So yeah, they're pretty easy generally. English is not a Romance language, but they do have a lot of borrowed words from each other. And then also Germanic languages is the other branch of languages that is generally pretty easy. Same branch as English, but Germanic languages can have some harder grammar things as opposed to Romance languages. So the Germanic languages I'd recommend are either West Germanic languages, so Dutch and Afrikaans are incredibly easy. Dutch is spoken in the Netherlands, Afrikaans is spoken in South Africa. It's not like an African language as you would think in the traditional sense. It's easy. It's written in English letters. And to an extent, German can be harder because I believe it has 4 cases, I think, and it has some harder grammatical things that English doesn't have. But German's not too bad. If you want a bit of a trickier language, I don't actually know it. I only know some very basic stuff. I will learn it eventually, though. My friend speaks it. Or North Germanic languages. So when I say North and West, that's taking that Germanic branch and just further subdividing it. You don't need to know about that, though. So yeah, Norwegian is incredibly easy. Swedish is easy. Danish is, I think, meant to be a little bit harder, but still easy. And yeah, these are the languages most similar to English. That's what makes them easy. The general rule of language learning difficulty, as just a basic general rule without looking into anything more, the more similar a language is, the easier / quicker it is to learn. And then similarity just means vocab plus grammar rules. So if it has a bunch of words the same and the rules are the same, it's fairly similar, which means it's easy. If it has a bunch of different words and the rules are all over the place compared to English, it's going to be a bit harder because it's less similar and it's going to take way longer to learn. That is a pretty good general rule. But yeah, also I just wanted to put in some not so good languages, just so, again, as I've said, no, I don't even need to say it again, you heard me, start with whatever you want, but these are hard. Yeah, they're better left until later, because they are quite challenging, but basically, because English is a European language, the further away geographically is also a good way of looking at how hard it's going to be. So any Asian languages, such as any of the Chinese languages, most prominently Mandarin, but there's also Cantonese, Wu, any of the other ones, you probably haven't heard of them, they're all quite difficult. Japanese is obviously hard, Korean, Thai, Indian languages. Something you'll notice about all of them is none of them use the English alphabet, which is also called the Latin alphabet. They use their own alphabets, and that's because they have nothing in common with English and they weren't founded in the same place or time, like how other languages use the same alphabet as English because they're descended from similar languages. These languages have nothing to do with English, which means they are extremely different and quite challenging. I could go through and explain why all of them are hard, but I'm not going to because I can't be bothered, and that can be a video for another day. Yeah, any Asian languages are going to be quite difficult. Middle Eastern languages, the king of which is Arabic, which is famously hard. That's true. You can debate until the end of time what's harder, Mandarin or Arabic. It depends on the person, probably Mandarin. But yeah, I actually intend to learn them both quite soon, but we'll see. Persian is written in the Arabic script, so is Kurdish, I believe, similar scripts to Arabic. Persian has like 4 more letters. You wouldn't know the difference unless you knew it, and knew how to look for the difference, but yeah, they all just look kind of the same, and they're written from right to left in cursive with ridiculous pronunciation for English speakers, so good luck with them. And then any African languages spoken in small communities are going to be pretty hard as well. So Xhosa and Zulu, I don't know how to say them properly, very sorry. They're going to be quite difficult. Those are like the clicking languages you've heard. Yeah, and as soon as I say clicking languages, you're like, nah, not doing that. It's going to be pretty hard, and you'd probably need a teacher to get that pronunciation and stuff right. Also, although I said some European languages are generally easier, that's not always the case. So some Slavic languages are kind of like Eastern Europe. So like think Russian, Ukrainian, I believe Polish. There's a few others as well. Maybe Belarusian. I'm not 100% sure, but those are the Russians, the main one. They can be quite difficult. They use the Cyrillic alphabet, which you've probably seen. It's just how Russian's written, a bit different to English. It's quite hard. Finnish to an extent can be more difficult because it's not actually an Indo-European language, even though it's in the middle of Europe. It's not considered in the same language family. I actually don't know why for sure, but I know that it is like that. What else is there? Yeah, a few African languages, as I said before, Afrikaans is easy, and also Swahili are not that difficult because basically they've been influenced. There's a lot of colonization and stuff in Africa, so they've been influenced by English or other Germanic languages, which are related to English heavily, which makes them easier. What else is there? Yes, as I already said, the languages, the Asian, Middle Eastern, African languages have components that make them difficult because they're not similar, but obviously they're still learnable. Yeah, and I'd steer clear of these as a beginner because I think they will put you off unless you have some kind of desperation to just feel pain in learning a language. That can only be quenched by doing something really hard. You're a bit weird, but go for it. Like, if that's what you want to do, I'm not going to stop you. And, like, I'd be impressed if you could learn Chinese as your first language. But, yeah, that's basically it. Overall, if you want me to tell you a language, pick Italian. It's the easiest one to start with. It's the best one in my opinion, sorry. And, yeah, there's plenty of easy languages. Just pick one and commit to it. But, yeah, do your research first. It's pretty good. Also, just as I say, I've already talked about this in a previous video, but I am working on a website. So, if you've ever had the thought like, oh yeah, I don't know where to find stuff, I'd love to learn a language, I just don't know how the process is, I don't know where all the stuff I need is, I don't want to waste my time, and then you break something, I have a solution for you. I'm actually working on a website, and basically what that website is going to have is primarily, it's going to have resources for every single language. So you can go on there, you can find your language. There's like a whole selection. It looks really cool. Say you're learning French, you click on French, and it's got all the French resources you can need, starting from introduction to advanced. Whatever you need, it's all going to be in there. I'm working on it currently. It's going to take a bit more time. I should have it up and running hopefully in a week. But with not every language, I think we're going to start off with just 6. So French, Spanish, Italian, Russian, German, and Mandarin are going to be the 6. And then I've got like 12 to 18 others waiting to fill in. But yeah, it's a bit difficult. But yeah, it's going to have resources for basically every language you want to learn. It's going to explain alphabets in those languages. It'll have links to videos, websites, all those kinds of things. I'm not going to type out all the explanations myself because 1, I don't speak every language, surprise, and 2, it would take too long. So a lot of it's going to be links to websites that I'm going to review and put in and all that stuff. But yeah, if you just need like a collection of that just tells you here, do this, do this, do this, do this in order and learn them all, that's what the website's going to be. It's going to be really useful, I promise. So I'll have a link for it in the description. It's called headofstate.com.au. You can look it up if you like and have a look at it. I believe only the homepage works at the moment. If you click on anything, it'll just say, sorry, this page is under maintenance, and that would be because it's under maintenance. I'm still making it. So yeah. Anyway, thank you for listening, and I hope you can check out the rest of the videos on this channel and enjoy.